Hey students, do you want to know how to reduce the amount of duplicate code you have in your programs, keep your code organized, and work more efficiently with other programmers on your team? Well, have I got a video for you, because today we'll be working with functions. If you watch this video in its entirety, you'll be able to define what functions are, you'll be able to create and call functions, you'll also know how to pass values into functions as input and return a value from a function as output. Although functions are used in many programming languages, we will be working in the JavaScript language in this particular video. A wonderful world of functions awaits, so let's get started. A function is a named, self-contained unit of code that accomplishes a specific task. Because the function has a name, it can be called when it is needed by the program. There are many advantages of using functions. As I mentioned in the introduction, functions reduce duplicate code. Rather than rewriting multiple lines of the same code, functions can be declared once and called many times in a program. When we write code, we often need to perform the same operations over and over again. This creates duplicate code, which I've indicated in orange. Functions remove the need for duplicate code. I can create a function and add the duplicate code into the function. When I write my program, any non-duplicate code can be added to the program, and any duplicate code can be called as a function. A function call is a single line of code. It can replace the need for retyping multiple lines of code in the program. Again, any non-duplicate code can be added to the program, and duplicate code can be called with a function. Again, we are reducing the amount of duplicate code. Non-duplicate code added. A function call calls the function and reduces the need for duplicate code. Functions can be reused in other programs if their functionality is needed. There's no need to reinvent the wheel each time you write code. If you need a function in a program and you've used that function in a previous program, you can simply reuse the function. Functions keep code organized. Functions break up code into distinct modules, each with a singular purpose. This allows us to group our code into blocks based on the task that the code performs. Functions allow teams to divide programming assignments between the team members. Since functions are self-contained blocks of code, each team member can work independently on his or her own tasks. Many programming languages contain a pre-existing library of functions. For example, in JavaScript, you may be familiar with using alert to output a message to a user. Alert is actually the name of a function which is built into the JavaScript programming language. Using built-in function provides us with some excellent capabilities, like displaying a message to the user, as shown here. I'll talk about additional built-in functions in future videos, but for this video, we want to talk about building our own functions. So how do we create functions in JavaScript? To create a function in JavaScript, we start by typing the function reserved word. Notice this reserved word is typed in all lowercase letters, and it will be followed by a space. After typing the function reserved word, next we'll type a function's name. Function names follow the same rules as we use for naming variables. When we name a function must contain no spaces. The function name must start with either a letter, an underscore, or a $sign. No other characters are valid for the first letter of a function name. Function names must only contain letters, numbers, underscores, or $signs. Numbers are not allowed as the first character, but they can be used as a character after the first character. Function names must be used in the case in which they are typed. JavaScript is a case-sensitive language. We must match the spelling and the case that we use when we name our function. Functions must not have the same name as a reserved word. I cannot name a function var because var is a reserved word. We mentioned that function is a reserved word also. We cannot have a function named function. In addition to these rules for naming functions, there are also some best practices. The best practices for naming a function are to describe the task the function performs in the name. You'll notice I named my function showFunctionDemo because that's what it does. It shows a function demonstration. We're seeing what the syntax looks like in a function. When naming a function, start with a verb. All functions perform an action, so we should use action words to name our functions. It's a good idea to start the name of the function with a verb. Lastly, we want to use camel case when we name our function. You'll notice the name showFunctionDemo has the first word in all lowercase. If there are words after the first word, each word after the first word begins with a capital letter. All other letters in the word are in lowercase. Immediately after the name of the function, with no space following, we type a set of parentheses. Inside of the parentheses, we can send input into the function. This input could be in the form of values, variables, or objects. Immediately after the closing parentheses, we can type an open brace. At the end of the function, we always type a closing brace. If there are statements within the function, which there should be, you'll find the statements fall within the braces. And that's all we need for a function. Next, let's take a look at an example of creating a function. Here you'll notice that I've opened up my text editor, Notepad++. Inside of the script tags, I'm going to create a function. I'll give myself a little bit of space and type the function keyword first. I follow the function keyword with a space and then the name of the function. I'm going to name my function displayHello. After the function name, I follow it with my parentheses and any input that I'm sending into the function. I'm not sending any input into this function, so I'll leave the space between the parentheses completely blank. After the parentheses, I'm going to type an open brace, and so I don't forget, I'm going to type my closing brace at the end. Although it's not necessary, I'm just going to mark where this function ends. Next, I'll make my function do something by adding an alert box. When I'm finished my work, I'll save it. Now we're not finished yet because in order to use a function, you must call the function. I'm going to run my function just to let you see that a function that's not called doesn't do anything. I'll close my browser window and I'll add a call to the function. To call the function, after the end of the function, I'll type display hello, parentheses, semicolon. Notice that the spelling of display hello in the function call on line 13 matches exactly the name of the function which appears on line 9. The spelling is identical, and it also matches the same case. If I save my work now and run the function, you'll notice the message box appears. Now that we understand how to create a simple function, let's take a look at creating a function that accepts input. If we want to create a function that accepts input, we begin like we do with any type of function. We begin with the function keyword. Next, we'll type a space and type the name of the function. We're going to create a function that will double any value that is sent into the function, so we'll call our function double it. After the function name, we'll type our parentheses, and in between the parentheses, we'll type in a variable that we want to use. We can give this variable any name we want, but we must use the naming conventions for variables. This particular function will only take one value as input. We call this a parameter. After the closing parentheses, we'll add a brace and end our function with another brace. The function itself will be nothing more than an alert box. Like with any function, functions do not operate unless they are called. We can call the function by typing the function's name and sending in a value. This value can be any number we like, as long as it is numeric. I'll save my work and run the function. In addition to sending in numeric values, we could also send in a variable. For example, if I created a variable called number to double, and I set the value equal to 8, I could send this variable into the function. Once again, I'll save my work and run the code. Now that we know how to send a single parameter as input to a function, let's send in multiple values to our function. We'll create a function again, always starting off with the function keyword. Next, we'll type the function's name. For this function, we'll be subtracting two numbers and doubling the result. We'll name the function subtract and double. For the parameters, I'll be sending in the two values that we'll be subtracting. These parameters that we are creating in the function's declaration will act as variables when we use them inside of the function. I'll type my opening parentheses and type the name of the first parameter. I'll call it subtract from. To separate parameters, we type a comma, and now I'll type the second parameter. I'll call this value to subtract. I'll close the parentheses and type a brace to begin the function. So I don't forget, I'll type a closing brace to end the function. For this function, we will display the calculations output in an alert box. I'll type alert and the calculation. You might notice that this calculation has two sets of parentheses. The inside set of parentheses ensures that subtraction occurs first. The outside set of parentheses is required by the alert function. After the function has been declared and created, I'll call the function. I'll type subtract and double, and I'll subtract the number 7 and 2. Notice, as always, the function call on line 14 matches exactly the spelling that you find in the function's name on line 9. Because I'm sending two values into the function, you'll notice that I've separated the 7 and the 2 as the values I'm using. The 7 will be assigned to subtract from when it is sent to the function, and the 2 will be assigned to the value to subtract in the function. I must have two values inside of the function call because I have two values in the function's declaration. For this function, order is important. 7 minus 2 is not the same thing as 2 minus 7. So we must make sure that we send the values in the correct order when we send them to a function. We're all done the work at this point. Let's go ahead and save and run. The output of the function is correct. 7 minus 2 is equal to 5. If we double 5, we get the number 10. So we now understand how to send multiple values into a function as parameters. In addition to sending input into a function, we can also return output from a function. Let's see how we can return values from functions. Let's create a function that will return a value. Let's return a message. Let's call our function return happy message. This function will take no input and will block out the beginning and end of the function with opening and closing braces. For our function, let's return the message, have a great day. To return a value from a function, we'll use the return keyword. Notice return is typed in all lowercase letters and it's followed by a space. We want to return the message, have a great day. Now that we have our function, let's call the function. If we simply type the name of our function, nothing's going to happen because the function return is nothing more than a string. We need to do something with that string. So what we'll do is we'll actually put it inside of an alert box. This will display the string that is returned from the function. So what's happening is we're calling the function. The function is returning a string. The string is being sent back to the call of the function, and the string that is returned is being displayed in the alert box. Let's save our work and test it out. Before wrapping things up, I wanted to point out one final advantage of using functions. Another programmer may write a function that is extremely complex. If I have access to this function, like I do with built-in libraries, I don't need to understand all of the complexities of the function. I only need to understand what the function does, what I need to pass as input, and what I can expect to receive as output, if there is any. This concludes this video on function basics. You should have a better understanding of what functions do and how they work. You should be able to create and call a function, and you should know how to pass values as parameters into a function and return a value from a function. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.